Hello, welcome back to Marathon Man, where I'm going through Doctor Who from the very beginning, and you join me just as we've said goodbye to the first Doctor. So, now that we've finished his era on TV, I thought why not let's take a quick look at his numerous other appearances in the spin-off media. While this is a marathon through the TV show Doctor Who, it's by no means taking in every single Doctor Who story ever told. There are plenty more in various other formats: audio dramas, novels, short stories, comic books, even cigarette cards and ice lollies. This has the considerable benefits of your favourite Doctor not being confined to just the TV show, and that means that you can spend far more time with them than may first appear. And the first Doctor is no exception, with scores of stories across a myriad of formats, and some of his best ones lie among them. Now, this video will be by no means exhaustive. I may be a lifelong Doctor Who fan, but there is just so much to consume that there is absolutely no way I have done it all. And I'm not that big a comic book guy, for example, so that's an instant gap already. Nor did I collect cigarette cards or buy ice lollies in the 1960s. Now instead, this will be a brief overview of the first Doctor in expanded media, but I may spend a bit of time on my own personal favourites. As well as extending the travels each companion from the TV show had with him, the first Doctor also has brand new companions away from it. John and Jillian are two other grandchildren getting into scrapes with him in the TV comics from the 1960s. These stories seem to take place in an entirely different continuity, and even though reconciling Doctor Who's continuity is something of a challenge that a lot of fans rise to, I foresee horrendous headaches if I try with some points. John and Jillian being one of those. They cross over into the second Doctor's TV comics too, before being written out. Now, quite why the TV companions couldn't just be adapted into comic book form like the Doctor himself is, I don't quite know. But what I do know is that I have never felt the inclination to seek out these comic book stories with John and Jillian. But you know, if I'm missing out on some fantastic Doctor Who, then do feel free to let me know in the comments below. Quite a notable new companion is introduced in the Big Finish Companion Chronicles range. Oliver Harper, played by comedian Tom Allen, travels with Stephen and the Doctor for a few stories set between the Daleks' master plan and the massacre, and he's a really interesting character. A gay man from a time when it was still illegal to be so in the UK. And having this be fairly contemporaneous to when the first Doctor and Stephen would have been adventuring on TV, make this a really rich dynamic to explore. There are also a couple of short stories from the 1960s annuals which gift the Doctor sort of new companions, plus a novella called Doctor Who and the Invasion of Space, which has the Mortimer family go on an adventure with him as they flee the Great Fire of London. This story also has the distinction of being the first official original prose story featuring the Doctor in print that wasn't based on an existing TV one, outside the short stories in the annuals. Basically, it's novella length, but it was published as its own book. It was the first time that had happened, and it wouldn't be for another 25 years before the Doctor got his own original adventure in fiction, long form, in print again. In 1991, Virgin began their famous New Adventures range, focusing on the continuing adventures of the Seventh Doctor and Ace, but not long after, in 1994, they also began publishing their Missing Adventures line, new original novels featuring the first 6 Doctors. The first Doctor had 5 of these before transitioning to the BBC Past Doctors line when the BBC decided to publish their own Doctor Who novels, rather than allowing Virgin to continue. The first Doctor leads 8 of these, with cameos in several others. The novel Salvation takes place in between the end of the massacre and the Ark, essentially making it Dodo's first adventure, which does a little bit of damage control. If you remember my video in the Ark, one of my issues was that it treats Dodo as if she's already familiar with the show's shorthand. With Salvation, she kind of has a first go at it, so maybe yeah, when she lands on the Ark, she's already a little bit au fait with everything. Now, I may have also said in an earlier video that I find the novel format an unusual way of telling a Doctor Who story. Now, this is a purely personal thing. I've always found that Doctor Who's existence as a TV show affords it a language that for me anyway, doesn't particularly translate all that well, all that often into novels. And while it was a fantastic way of keeping Doctor Who alive through the wilderness years, I was actually catching up on Doctor Who the TV show, so the amount of Doctor Who novels that I've actually read is relatively small, especially when you consider how many of them there are now. But I have really liked some, and my favourite of the first Doctor prose that I've read is 10 Little Aliens, featuring Ben and Polly. He isn't just confined to the longer novel format in print either, as well as the short stories from the annuals. Both the BBC and Big Finish stewarded the short trips range at various points, the latter transferring the range to audiobooks from print. And there's also the Virgin Decalogue series. There are also a couple of novellas from Telos, Time and Relative by Kim Newman and Frayed by Tara Sams, which is pen name for Stephen Cole apparently. Now both of these are set prior to An Unearthly Child, an area of the Doctor's life which has been explored elsewhere, including in Big Finish. And while I literally just said that Doctor Who's existence as a TV show affords it a language that isn't translated all that successfully to novels, I do find it translated more successfully to the audio format. And I think it's probably to do with it being performed media. It just means that the magic is captured better for me in the audio dramas, of which there are plenty. As well as the Companion Chronicles, Lost Stories and Early Adventures ranges, which see original First Doctor companion actors bring to life enhanced audio readings of new adventures, or ones which were due to be made for TV but weren't, there's also an ever-growing amount of full cast audio dramas where actors David Bradley and Stephen Noonan both bring the First Doctor to life. David Bradley very much plays his First Doctor, the likes of which we've seen at the end of The Doctor Falls, in Twice Upon a Time, and in The Power of the Doctor briefly. So your enjoyment of his range of stories, which I happen to think are very good, might hinge exclusively on whether or not you enjoy his take on the Doctor. Stephen Noonan, on the other hand, while not doing an out-and-out full-on impression of William Hartnell, is a more original First Doctor accurate take on the character, and his stories with Lauren Cornelius as Dodo have so far been really strong too. And like the novels slotted in new adventures for the First Doctor into various points in his era, with Susan, Barbara, Ian, Vicky, Stephen, Dodo, Ben and Polly all featuring, and the early TV comic created a whole other era with two entirely different grandchildren, the audios from Big Finish also enhance his era by creatively crafting new gaps in which to set further adventures. Seizing the possibilities of G. Marsh's excellent Sarah Kingdom, a run of stories are set within the Daleks' master plan, where Sarah travels more extensively with Stephen and the Doctor, including a canonical first meeting with the Sontarans, with stories from both the Companion Chronicles and Early Adventures ranges fleshing out her time on the TARDIS. And Big Finish have even brought Katarina into the fold, so every single First Doctor companion from the TV show is represented on audio. Because that's what these appearances in expanded media do. They supplement each Doctor's era with precisely what we as Doctor Who fans want: more stories. 60 years after he debuted, and we are still getting new First Doctor stories, and that's indicative of Doctor Who's inherent magic. Able to transcend time itself, bringing the past back to life, either through audio, images, or in print. So, do I have any highlights from what I've consumed of the First Doctor in these additional spheres? Very much so. Well, Doctor Who on TV will always take precedence. There are some stories in these spin-off media that can easily give the parent show a run for its money. Personal highlights include Doctor Who and the Invasion from Space, that 1966 novella with the Mortimer family as de facto companions. It's slim, but its curiosity factor really carries a lot of weight for me, and the audiobook read by Peter Purves is well worth checking out. I'm also very fond of the 10 Little Aliens novel from the BBC Past Doctors range, and I think that the Big Finish Lost Stories audio Farewell Great Macedon is superb, along with a couple of the David Bradley stories which carry with them settings and concepts that feel like they could have slotted in very well into the first 2 seasons of the show. 60 years after he walked unassumingly into our lives while coughing into his hanky, 57 years after he departed as the lead of the show, and 48 years after the death of William Hartnell, the fact that we are still awaiting new adventures with the First Doctor is a little bit miraculous. And he'll even be showing up again on this very marathon. Not even William Hartnell has put in his last performance yet. Doctor Who's great, isn't it? As ever, thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this cursory glance at the further adventures of Doctor Number 1 outside of the main show, then you know how YouTube works. Please do give it a like and share it around. I would be supremely grateful. And what are your favourite First Doctor stories from the expanded universe? Have I mentioned some of them, or have you got to now go and buy a new device because you smashed it in anger at my dismissal of John and Jillian? Let me know in the comments below. And before we plough on with the marathon under the stewardship of Patrick Trayton, I've got a couple more Hartnell videos to come. Firstly, a ranking of all of his 29 stories so far, followed by a video dedicated to the man himself. So if you don't want to miss those, hit the subscribe button, clang the cloister bell, and I'll see you back here soon for a First Doctor Countdown.